Test. Good morning. My name is Peel Hawthorne, and I'm the current president of the Professional and Professional Faculty Assembly. It's my honor to welcome you here this morning. If you're here in the room, then you are joining groups that are on live stream, and perhaps you may have pulled this up as an archived recording sometime in the future. In any of those cases, if you're here, you have taken a great step towards a better understanding of the college, the way it works, and the policies and procedures that affect us all as professional and professional faculty. So I applaud you for being here. Thank you for your presence. I would like to just take a couple of minutes to explain a little bit better about how the PPFA works, talk a little bit about our elections that are coming up, or actually ongoing right now with our nomination process. And then we're going to turn the floor over to John Poma, as if you had a chance to look at the questions on our website, you'll see that John is going to be in position to answer the bulk of those questions. So he has prepared a PowerPoint presentation for us. If John leaves any time for our other guests, then we will also be hearing from them, as well as a representative from the Presidential Search Committee. Looking for your input. At any point, if we have questions, we'll be happy to take them from the floor. We're a little bit of a flow schedule. We're not exactly sure how this is going to run, so we'll just see how the topics play out. I would like to say that the PPFA represents you, and that we basically act as a monitoring watchdog, may be a little bit too strong, but we do monitor issues on campus. We have an opportunity to review policy and make recommendations to the administration, and basically to be able to speak with one voice. There are over now 680 PPFs on campus as a result of the restructuring that just came through with many of our folks going back and forth between operational and professional. Some of our more recent accomplishments in the last couple of years, we were able to help with the tuition assistance or tuition waiver program for our salaried part-time employees. We conducted performance evaluation surveys, planning surveys, climate surveys, made sure we were included in the service awards and employee appreciation day, and we partnered with Staff Assembly to help create the Professional Development Fund. And I know Babs spent a great deal of time on that. She was a former member of the PPFA, so thank you for getting that off the ground. The PPFA has a number of standing committees, so we are constantly monitoring these areas. If you would go on the William & Mary website and just type in PPFA, you'll come up with our website, and you can see that we have our assembly members represented here with their nice photos. They asked me not to do this, but too bad. And if I could have the assembly members please stand for a moment just to recognize their work and what they've done in service of the college. Thank you. We are in the election process right now, so I encourage you to go on our website and to nominate yourself or someone else. And then if you do go to that website, you'll see all the other programs that are coming up, and you can look back and see our minutes. We meet once a month, usually on Wednesday mornings, but that's flexible according to the availability of the group. And then we will be having our last meeting for this year at VIMS on June 7th. So those are open to anyone to come in and observe. So I invite you to get involved and then to be part of the voting process when that becomes available on May 19th. We will close nominations and start our voting. Our featured guest today, as you know, if you're here, I imagine you realize that we've got a few leaders on campus that are joining us today: John Poma, Sam Jones, Amy Sebring, and Henry Broadus. And then we also have Yabo, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, Asiapim who is a member of the Presidential Committee. So without further ado, I am going to ask John to come up and we'll get his PowerPoint started. And thank you very much. Did you want me to advance or are you good?
I think I can do it. Okay. I may just need your help when we get
To the,
to that, yeah.
okay.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hold that back just a little bit. So first, I'd just like to thank the Assembly for doing this morning. This is always a great opportunity to be able to address questions, concerns and issues. And, sometimes when there is change and a lot going on, that change takes on a life of its own, and sometimes we connect the wrong dots, and it is, sometimes hard. I love coming to the PPF, to the Staff Assembly, and having meetings around campus to be able to talk about some of what we're doing. But sometimes there is only one of me and there's a lot of you, so this is a great opportunity to be able to address some of those questions. I did look at the agenda and had that feeling that maybe I drew the short straw today. When I was looking at the time allotment, I did come up to Peel this morning and said, I have laryngitis. I can't. That would mean that Sam would have to take over or somebody else, but no, I mean, all kidding aside, thank you, and I appreciate the questions, and hopefully today will be both informative and helpful. Many of the, well, let's just start just first. Many of the questions did revolve around leave. There were a few questions about who are we and what do we call ourselves and why are we called professionals and operational, and how did that come to be? So obviously I was not here when we did the restructuring back in 2006, so I can tell you what I know from since I've been here. We recently republished our classification policy. In the employee classification policy, we essentially have three groups of employees: executives, professionals, and operational employees. We also have grandfathered state classified employees. State classified employees fall outside of the university system and continue to follow DHRM rules. But in terms of employee classification, we have essentially three groups: the executive group, the professional group, and the operational group. Within the professional group are subgroups. And there are different types of employees who are considered professional. Professional faculty are considered professional. If you're a lawyer, you're considered professional. If you're a doctor, you're considered professional. If you are a professional administrative person, we have many administration positions on campus that are of a professional nature. All of the positions together fall under one employee classification type, professional, but within that group are different types of employees, including professional faculty. And also on that, one of the questions was, back in restructuring, why were there different employee groups? Part of the reason why there's a professional group and an operational group is from the management restructuring agreement, and it really has its roots in the benefits that the university is permitted and authorized to extend to its employees. Particularly on the pension side, the optional retirement plan by VRS and by state rules could only be offered to the equivalent of what used to be called AP faculty or professional faculty. So when we restructured, we had to create employee classifications that aligned with the types of benefits that we could provide to our employees. And again, I wasn't here back in 2006, but that did drive a lot of how we created our employee classification structure. And continuing to today, we do not have the ability to offer certain benefit programs to operational employees, in particular the optional retirement plan. There was a bill that was pending before the legislature this past session that would have authorized universities to extend an optional retirement plan. I don't think that got out of committee, but until there is a legislative change, there are, again, certain benefit programs that cannot be made available to all of our employees. Someday I hope that we can have a more uniform benefit package that would be provided to both professional employees and operational employees, but until there's a legislative change, that can't occur. Many of the questions revolved around leave, and in particular sick leave. And I understand, I know that results from some of the changes that we made in terms of how we track leave. And I've been around campus a little bit and have held some various meetings about what that means. So what I thought I would do this morning is compare the leave programs for professional employees and compare that to the leave program for operational employees, and hopefully dispel some of the myths out there about what the changes, what the impact of those changes are. So first, what changed? Other than tracking and how we track leave, really not much else has changed. So for most professionals, most of our professional class, there really should be no impact to the leave that you have to take. How that leave is tracked and what bucket that leave falls in may change, but again, for most people, the available leave is not changing at all. Why? I mean, why did we make the change? I've worked with a number of you when I look out on leave issues, and I would sometimes get a phone call that says, John, how much leave does Bill have left to take of sick leave? How much short-term disability leave does Sally have? And when we got those calls, the answer was, well, I don't know. In the, sort of, you can hear, the person on the phone saying, what do you mean you don't know? How come you don't know? And that's because we were not tracking leave for some of our professionals in Banner. And one of the things to remember is that when a professional is hired, they have the choice to elect between two retirement plans. And with that choice, you can also elect to either participate in the university sick and disability leave program or the VSDP plan. We have some professionals who have elected VSDP and not the university leave program. Those professionals have always had to record their time in Banner. That is not new. The only folks that had not recorded their time in the past were the employees in the university sick and disability program. They weren't required to. However, in Banner, there actually was a bucket there for employees to record time. And in fact, we did have some professionals in the university sick and disability leave plan who were recording their sick time. And what occurred was, because that wasn't really being tracked, it caused them to have a negative balance because we weren't creating, that bucket. There are also compliance issues. Under the Family Medical and Leave Act, there are certain times when we as an employer are required to send you a notice of your rights and responsibilities, or of your rights and our responsibilities under the Family Medical Leave Act. And if we don't know that somebody is taking sick leave, we are not able to comply with the requirements of FEMLA. So there also is a compliance reason, why tracking time does make sense. So one of the things that it doesn't do, and when I had a similar meeting at the library, one of the concerns is that we are removing discretion from managers and employees about how to take that leave. And that's one of the things that we're not trying to do, and I can talk about some specific examples, and I don't want to get into too much detail. But if you're a professional and you have a doctor's appointment, professional employees are all exempt, with the exception of a few professionals that went to non-exempt in the fall because of the law changes that were occurring. But if you're a professional employee and you have a doctor appointment on Thursday from 2 until 5. You and your supervisor can agree that within that FLSA work week, you can make up that time, and that you can work extra hours, work through lunch. And if you do that, we are not requiring that you record that time because you have made up that time within the week. However, if you're gone for an entire day and you haven't agreed with your supervisor that you can work from home and it is a true sick day, then that's the time that has to be recorded in Banner. There are also, between the two, we'll talk about the buckets, but between the sick leave bucket where you get the 10 hours of sick time and then the bucket of 120 calendar days, there was a great question that we were asked at another session. So what happens if I'm sick and I go out and I take my sick day and I have an unexpected complication, and for some reason I end up in the hospital now and I eat up those 10 sick days. And so my bucket is gone, and then a month later, I have a migraine or my child is sick. Does that mean that I have to now take annual leave because I've used up my 10 sick days? And the answer is no, a little bit like, in accounting. If that happens, we can actually go back and reclass that time. When you had that complication and you ended up being in the hospital or out for those 10 consecutive days or 5 days, whatever it might be, we'll go back and that will go against your 120 calendar days because that is a qualifying Family Medical Leave Act short-term disability condition. So between the two buckets, you don't have to exhaust the 10 days to start using those 120 days. All it requires is that if you have a qualifying condition that needs to go through HR, you have to submit the appropriate medical documentation, and if it qualifies for short term, it will go against that other bucket. But so again, for most situations and most employees, the 10 days plus the 120, that is not changing, and we're not diminishing any amount of sick time that you have available. We're just trying to provide more consistency, particularly across campus, because folks were doing in different ways about how we record that and know how much time you have left. So what I wanted to do is just compare. What is the leave program that operational employees and participants in the VSDP plan have versus professional employees? So first, annual leave. A professional accrues 8 hours of annual leave time each pay period, regardless of years of service. An operational employee, a new employee, begins accruing 4 hours per pay period. So there's a significant difference in the accrual for annual leave between a professional and an operational employee. It would take you'd have to be here 26 years before you would earn more annual leave as an operational or classified employee than a professional employee would have. Sick leave. So again, how does sick leave compare between our different employee groups? As a classified employee, you accrue sick leave based upon years of service. And if you have less than 60 months, less than 5 years, you begin accruing 64 hours of sick leave a year. And then that increases up to 80 hours based upon years of service. On the university professional side, there was always a 10-day sick day bucket that was not recorded. And one of the things, when I first came to campus as a new employee in my onboarding, I asked questions about how's that sick leave counted, how's it tracked, when do you do it, when do you don't do it, and I got different answers, depending upon who I asked. And and the same was true across campus. The way we were treating that sick leave varied from department to department, from manager to manager, because there wasn't a clear policy and there wasn't a clear understanding. So again, more than anything, one of the things that we heard when we did the employee climate survey, it's that type of inconsistency, that causes morale issues with employees, or unfairness. Why is it done this way in one department and done a different way somewhere else? So again, what we were trying to do, was just to create consistency and to create clear guidelines about how you track and record sick time. So the 10 days, those 10 days were always there. I've heard people say they were informal, or you didn't begin counting until you used 10. Was the 10 consecutive or was the 10 intermittent? And it was those types of questions that, that we were trying to provide clarity on. With respect to the 120 days, again, I wasn't here when we implemented the short-term policy, but there's a really important word, in the policy. The original policy was 120 calendar days of disability and sick leave. The intent was never to provide unlimited sick days to any class of employees. There was always an intent to provide a bucket of sick leave and a bucket of leave for short-term disability and sickness. 120 calendar days was meant to mirror the policy that faculty had, and it was intended, I believe, that most of that is calendar days because we assume people are taking that leave in big chunks, that it really was meant to be disability leave that you're taking in a chunk, and that's why it was created as 120 calendar days, because most people are using all of that leave at one time. If it was meant to be used for the random intermittent days, then we would have had 80 work days or whatever the equivalent might be. Again, when you take the short term, if you compare it on the operational side, short-term leave for operational employees is administered by the Reed Group. We self-administer the 120 calendar days for our professional employees. So what that means is we truly do have more flexibility with a professional employee about what counts as that 120 calendar days. So, again, for us as a professional employee, again, I think it's actually still, there's a lot more discretion, and the standard is not nearly as tight as if it was being administered through the Reed Group. But so this is a comparison of sick leave. And again, it's sort of comparable. When the plan was being constructed and put in place back in 2006, you can tell that we were looking at what the state program was and then trying to create a program that better suited and better matched our needs as an employer, but not for there to be completely necessarily wholesale differences. So the short-term leave, the program through VSDP is confusing. So if you're an operational or classified employee and you have a short-term illness or sickness and you have to take leave, and you come to HR and you ask, how much time do I have? You have to pull out a schedule. It's not very simple to look at and say, here's exactly what you get. So again, I think when we created the university program, we were trying to simplify and make that program easier to administer. So the big difference is if you're a professional, you have 120 calendar days of short-term disability and sick leave. That eligibility is on day one. So if you're hired on May 4th and on June 1st you have an unfortunate illness, cancer, heart, whatever it might be, you are eligible at the beginning of employment for that short-term leave. On the classified VSDP program, you are not eligible on day one for short-term leave. And the big difference is you can see that there are very few days paid at 100% of pay on the operational side versus the professional side where all of those days are paid at 100% of pay. So between the two programs, in almost all cases, the professional program is a richer benefit as compared to the VSDP plan. So then there was a question, well, but if you look at family and personal leave, they need to account for that in fact operational employees get family and personal leave and professional employees don't, so it's not quite an equivalent benefit. So VSDP and operational employees do accrue family and personal leave. There's a really big difference, though, between what an operational employee gets on family personal leave and what we have eligible on the 120 calendar days. One of the benefits of the program for professionals is that if you have a sick or ill dependent or spouse or parent, a family medical leave at qualifying event where you need time to care for that parent or for that child or for that family member, you can use all of your 120 calendar days of leave to take care of that family member. On the operational side, you only have those 40 hours, up to those 40 hours that you can use to care for a family member who might be ill. That really is the biggest difference and the biggest advantage of the plan that professional employees are in. The leave for operational and classified employees, you can only use that leave for your own illness or injury. You don't have the ability to have that extended leave. Also on parental leave, there is again a big difference. So if you are an operational employee and you are a mother, you're able to take 6 weeks of leave for your postpartum care. That is leave for yourself, but you don't have additional leave that you can take as parental leave. So you can take the mother can take their 6 weeks. If you're a dad, you don't have that 6 weeks. As a professional employee, again, the 120 days can be used for parental leave, and that can be for mother or for father. When we made the tracking change, there's another important change that we did make that has not been well communicated, that has been communicated. In the past, if you and your spouse or partner both worked for William & Mary, you had up to a combined total of 120 hours of parental leave, or 120 calendar days of parental leave between the two of you. It was not provided for each of the individual parents. When we made the changes earlier this semester, that leave is also now available to both spouses, provided that you're not in the same department and don't take it at the same time. If you're in the same department, that leave would have to be spread out, so it's not taken at the same time. But again, if you look at what the operational program is, the professional program, there is a huge advantage and benefit to being a professional and having the short-term program that we provide for professionals. So let me just stop there. I'm going to show a couple of FAQs that we have online that do provide really comprehensive guidance and should answer most of the questions. But because there were so many questions about leave, let me just stop for just a second and take whatever questions that you might have about leave. And I know there have to be questions. It's just that first person who's brave enough.
Just to clarify, now the main difference is that unless you agree with your supervisor that you're going to make up like this time or something, anytime you are taking sick time, you have to report
Correct.
that time.
Yes.
If you get past 10 days, then you would have to go into another pool.
Yeah, so if you get past 10 days, you have to go into another pool. In most cases, again, if you're using up that much sick time, that there generally is an underlying medical reason that will qualify for family medical leave, it's a qualifying condition, then you bump over to that 120 days. Or if it doesn't qualify, then that's where the FAQ said, yes, you would have to use annual leave, if you've run out of your sick leave. So just take the example of the person, I have a headache today, I have a stomach ache tomorrow, I sprained my ankle, I hurt my wrist, my eye hurts, whatever it might be, where you just have sort of like 10 random days and you burn up that sick leave. And then on that 11th day, you just have, something that's not connected to anything else. That would not qualify for a short-term for that 120 calendar days. However, let's say you have diabetes or you have a child with diabetes and you've had to miss 5 days of work this month to take your child to medical appointments, and then next month he's going to have 3 days, and the following month. If you have a condition either for yourself or for your child that would, that is a Family Medical Leave Act qualifying condition, that, you're not going to burn through your 10 days of sick leave. That's going to be counted in that 120-day bucket. But again, that's where between manager and human resources and employee, we have to look at what are the reasons for the leave and what bucket should it fall in. And again, it just provides for better consistency, because there are, and I know I've worked with some of you before, you do get those questions when somebody is out. Okay, well, how much time have they used, and when do they have to come back to work? And it's sort of almost embarrassing for us to be able to say, well, I don't know. You tell me, have you been tracking that time offline? We're just trying to track it online. So again, we're able to really help provide the clarity and the transparency about what expectations are for employees. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yep, that's a great question. So yes, if you use some of those 120 days, every July you earn back 30. And that's, so if you use all of your 120 for some reason in a particular year, then that next July you earn back 30. And you can never earn more than, there's never more than 120. So if you've only used 10, then you'd only earn back 10. You don't earn back 30. Sure. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, if I have to take my child to the doctor, can I use 4 hours of my sick time? And the answer is yes. You can use 4 hours of your sick time to take a child or family member for medical care. And you can also, again, for a short time, less than a whole day, you can also work out a flexible work schedule with your supervisor. Darlene?
Does HR have a process that sets up how you report these intermittent sick days that then could qualify for FMLA to HR, or is that in the unit or
So
school?
it's really an employer responsibility and a unit responsibility. So again, we don't know if you've taken three consecutive days for some reason. If you think you have an FMLA qualifying reason, then you need, either you on behalf of the employer or the employee needs to go to HR, and there's an FMLA form that needs to be completed. Family medical leave can either be taken in a block or as intermittent leave. You just need a physician to say that this is a condition that does require continuing care, and I certify that this person needs to take leave either for himself or herself or for care of a family member. But that burden is on you to come to us so we can work with you to determine if it goes in that other bucket. Otherwise, it's just going to be recorded as sick time. Was there another? No, just saying hello. Hi. I got to stand here because the light sort of was blinding.
That's okay. Hi there. Just a question about how the health insurance overlays on top of this. So when I have expectant moms that have had children too close together to qualify for the full 120 days, and they're making the very difficult decision of, am I going to be out? If I only get 30-day accrual, maybe I only have 30 days in the next year, or 60 days in the next year. Do they have the option to take 120 days? And if so, how does health insurance coverage work during that 60-day period where they may be taking leave, presumably without pay?
So yes, if you don't have enough paid leave in your bank, in your balance, the Family Medical Leave Act does provide you with the right to take unpaid leave. And you can take up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave if you don't have enough paid days to keep it as paid leave. And then if you take 12 weeks of unpaid leave, Family Medical Leave Act requires that we continue to provide the ability to acquire health insurance. So you would be responsible for the employee portion of your health insurance premium. So access to health insurance remains, but it would be as an unpaid employee.
All right, so you get double whammy, kind of, in a sense, right? So if you take your extra time then you need to be also be not only being compensated, but have to pay additional money in order to maintain your health care benefits if you have benefits through the state.
Yes, so I mean, that's actually true for any condition. So if for any reason you take unpaid family medical leave, you do have to pay the cost of your health insurance. So we're not treating parental leave any different than we are any other condition.
Yeah. I would just give the feedback that I think that's very challenging, particularly for employees that feel like they've been here for time, they have worked certainly more than 4 years to accrue that leave or whatever it may be, and then kind of choices or outcomes, even if it's unexpected, to have that kind of decision to have to make to get them back has been challenging.
The other option that we do have is the leave share program. So, for those exigent cases, where particularly if somebody has a medical type of emergency and they don't have enough leave to cover it, we do have the leave share program. And in each year, it is used by some folks, but that is one of the safeguards that we have for employees, particularly in those emergency type cases or exceptional disease cases.
And does that work for both the operational employees and the professional, or
Yes,
only one
leave
category?
share is available for both.
Okay, and is it sorry to ask one more question
Yeah.
here, but I've got a captive audience. For someone in the operational side, that when you had that chart up there, that they qualified for 0 paid leave, are those employees in their first 0 to 12 months eligible for leave share benefits if someone wanted to contribute leave to them?
I believe the answer is yes, but I need to double check on that. I don't recall having had that come up, but so I think it depends upon the reason for the leave, but if you have an operational employee who has not been here long enough and they have a heart attack, they find out they have cancer, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, the leave share is available.
Thank you.
What I did want to show is I have links in the presentation. Oh, you did have it. So there are two FAQs that we have done that we've tried to be, to answer, most of the questions that employees might have. One's on the family medical leave, and the other is on the, I'm sorry. So the light's really hard for me to see the hands.
Did something change with the leave share on who's eligible?
So no, nothing changed with who's eligible. We did make a positive change with the leave share back in 2014 or 2015, that in the past, if you had exhausted your family medical leave, you were not eligible for leave share, and there was a situation where an employee had cared for a spouse who had a lengthy battle with cancer. And then the spouse died, and the employee had used all of their available paid leave and were no longer eligible for family medical leave. And the spouse needed some time, or the employee needed some time after the death of the spouse to just recover for the employee's own well-being. And we extended the leave share program to be able to continue. You could get leave share even if even if you had no Family Medical Leave Act eligibility left. It just seemed like that was the right thing to do to let so that's the only change to the leave share program that we've made in recent years.
Okay, so let me just clarify. I have an employee who is in the VSDP program, not professional,
Okay.
was told she was running out of leave, and she was told she was not eligible for leave share program because she was under VSDP.
So, okay, so the leave share program is for university
Okay,
employees, yes.
I just want to clarify.
Okay. It's one of the programs of the restructuring of the university benefits program.
That kind of brought up a question that I had around bereavement. Me again.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see who was asking.
Yeah, no problem. So as far as the bereavement plan, which I realize is kind of a different thing, how does that work in tandem with the sick
leave and
It's additional.
completely separate?
Yes,
And are
completely
there
separate.
rules around who like qualifies for bereavement, as in like if it's your family versus your spouse's family, what
Yes.
qualifies?
So I'd have to look at, so there are limits on who you can use bereavement for. It's immediate family member, parent, child, spouse. I'm conflating ours with a prior, so I'm not sure if it extends like aunt and uncle, but it is clear if I can provide a link online, but it is for immediate family, which would include a mother-in-law, father-in-law, stepchild. So there was also a question. Sam, do you want to take this one, or no? Okay, since I'm doing so well, he wants to see if I have legs left after I'm done, right? So there was a question about how do merit increases compare over the past several years to what the state provided classified employees. So this is a chart that I've adapted. We use it in the brochure for classified employees who are considering converting over to university status. But it goes back to 2010, and what I've done is I've shown what the state has provided as an across-the-board increase versus our average merit pool. In two of the years, in 2013, 2015, there was a compression adjustment, so you received an additional award based upon years of service. So for that, because the compression adjustment varied by years of service, I did an average a lot like the merit pool. So what was the average compression adjustment? So you can see for state classified employees, the range of salary increases range from 8.5% to 15.77%, depending upon years of service. So some employees were not eligible for compression, so they would only have received the 8.5. And again, the 15.77 is going to be an average. There were some employees that could have been higher and some that would have been lower based upon years of service. That's an average compression adjustment. And then on the university side, the average merit pool percentage was 19% during the same time frame. And again, for a university employee, the merit pool is an average. So there are some employees who would have done better than the 19%, and there are some employees who would have been lower than the 19%, because the merit's not across the board, it is based upon merit. But in terms of dollar pools, that shows you the comparison between what the university did and what the state did from 2010 forward. So I'm well past time. There was a question about performance management and achievement levels. And the gist of the question was, is there any benefit to encouraging someone to be anything more than a solid performer? Should we encourage folks to have a better performance? I think the answer to that is again, clearly yes. I mean, there was nothing that we changed in the policy was designed or intended in any way to say that we're not going to encourage employees, to try to achieve additional performance on behalf of the university. The intent was, and again, we were not doing a forced bell curve, was to provide some guidance about what a 3 means, what a 4 means, and what a 5 means. Because again, in the past, many of you have heard me speak, that almost all employees receive the same score. The percentage of 4s and 5s that were consistently awarded across the board was exceedingly high. So there wasn't a lot of differentiation between employees, which then also makes it hard when it comes time for merit increases to be able to make informed decisions about how to award merit. The biggest change with the new system is, in the past we had a composite score. You just had a summary rating of a 3, 4, or a 5. In the new Cornerstone system, you have the opportunity to provide ratings in a lot of different groups. And I use the example like with StrengthsFinders when Babs does some of the testing, or with Myers-Briggs, none of us, if you take the cornerstone, are going to consistently be an exceptional performer in every single group that you're being evaluated on. There are some things that we particularly excel at, and we're particularly strong performers, and there are others that that you do a great job at, but it may not be your strongest suit. So with the new system, and when evaluations are being done, you really need to look at each of the different groups, and evaluate the person on that particular. So when you're done, you're going to have a composite score. It's not going to be 3, 4, or 5 as a round number. It's going to be 3 point something, 4 point something. And so we're again trying to provide more distribution of scores so we can make better informed decisions. And then with the new scale, we were trying to provide some guidance about what is an exceptional performer? What is an advanced? And again, it's not a forced bell curve, but to give you some idea of sort of on a percentage basis that this is what this means, that this is reserved for your top, what you consider your top 10%, or this is truly a transformational, type leader within the organization. Receiving a 3 and saying that you are a solid performer, you're doing everything that's expected, and maybe perhaps a little bit more, that's what we should achieve for. That's what we're doing in art, and there's nothing wrong with receiving a 3. One of the changes, again, that we made is, in the past, the compensation policy said that if you were above the 50th percentile in your U band, you had to be a 4 or a 5 to be able to get a merit increase. Compensation policy says to receive a merit increase, you have to be a 3 or higher. You have to be a solid performer, and we're no longer, I think we forced ourselves into giving folks 4s and 5s because of how merit was awarded. Now we're looking at, your job expectations, your job responsibilities. If you are a solid performer and higher, you're eligible for a merit increase, and then we tried to provide some guidance about what a 3, 4, or 5 would mean for achievement levels. On other topics on Cornerstone, there were some folks saying it's a little bit, cumbersome, or, it's different than what we've done before. And as I've told folks, for most of you that know me, there's no line in the sand. We are trying to build, we're trying to learn, and we're trying to improve more than anything. So, as we learn about the new system, and as we get feedback from others, we will, make changes and adapt in future periods, because the whole goal of this is to improve our performance planning and our performance evaluation process. So feedback is important, and it is something that as we move forward, we'll continue to build upon and expand upon, and and hopefully improve our competencies as reviewers and evaluators. So the sequence, there's been some confusion about timing. When should you do certain things? Self-assessment is done first. Review is done next for the expiring performance period, and then we do the planning and the goal setting for next year. So it seemed to make sense to review the prior period first, and then to do your goal setting for the prior period. There's no magic to it. If you want to do the performance planning for the prior at the same time that you're doing the review, that's perfectly fine. We just tried to put it in chunks that that made some sense for how you have those discussions. And then there was a question about how we will use the information from Cornerstone. In the past, it was really hard to look at distribution of scores and compare it to units or certain supervisors. So one of the benefits of Cornerstone is that we will be able to look at the distribution of scores and see how it compares. Is there a particular supervisor who is giving very low scores as compared to others? So yes, the intent is to use the data out of Cornerstone to help guide us and to hopefully provide coaching and education for performance reviews. We have a new director of employee relations who is sitting next to Babs, and together, Ron Starsman and Babs, we will be using that data to help us in how we construct training programs, how we approach a performance improvement plan, perhaps, for an employee. So yes, that feedback from Cornerstone is going to be very important. An important question was asked about mental health. And how do we think about it, and what resources do we provide for both faculty and staff who might have a behavioral or a mental health concern? It is something for, again, for some of you who know me well, that is really important to me, and it's something that we have formed a working group to begin to look at how can we expand the resources that we make available, particularly for mental health. On the student side, there's a clear pathway for what we do if a student has a mental health concern. We don't have that clear pathway because we don't have a counseling center that is available, for employees. So between the EAP and other resources, we are, actively exploring what we can do to really help support and provide more resources. Can we form partnerships with providers in the local community that we would be, if someone comes into HR and just says, I'm really struggling, I don't know how I'm going to get through tomorrow, I don't have, I say, that bat phone that I can pick up and call somebody and say, can you see John tomorrow? There is the EAP, but sometimes it takes a while to get that appointment scheduled through the EAP. So it's something we're proactively reaching out to Kelly Crace. We have formed this new group of both faculty and professional and staff across campus to work on and to address, because it is a really important issue. It is something that still gets pushed under the rug, that people are uncomfortable talking about. If you have cancer, there's a lot of support that we can provide to or a physical health condition, but mental health is something that still is behind closed doors, something that's not talked about, and it is something that, together with our different affinity groups, that I very much want to work together on to see what we can do to provide better resources. Fair Labor Standards Act, this is a quick one. The question was asked, as an exempt employee, professional, do I only work 40 hours, or should I be expected, do I have to work more than 40? So if you're a professional and you're exempt, there is no limit to hours. You work as many hours as is needed between you and your supervisor to get the particular job done. But we don't count hours for professionals beyond 40. There's no timesheet requirement, and in fact, the law actually prohibits a professional from keeping a timesheet. If you require a professional or exempt employee to keep a timesheet, you can inadvertently convert that person to an overtime eligible person. Question was asked about comp time. Can professional employees accrue comp time? So we do have a compensatory leave program for professionals. It is limited. If you are required to work on a holiday or when the university is closed, you do accrue comp time that you have for 12 months to use. It is something you have to be required, so if it's Thanksgiving and I'm, for some reason, just choosing to work, I don't know why I would necessarily be doing that. That is not comp time. It has to be something where you are actually required to come in and perform. If you're voluntarily at home on a closed day working, that doesn't count, for comp time. Again, though, that as an exempt employee, between you and your supervisor, you can agree to a flex time schedule within your work week. So if it's homecoming weekend and you have worked all weekend, you can agree to shorten your, or not shorten, but to adjust your work week. So I think I have gone through all the topics that were HR related, and hopefully I have not left much time for the others, but.
I was going to say, oh darn, he didn't leave us any time. So first, thank you all for coming. I add my thanks to Peel's and John's that everybody came, and those that are watching us online for being able to do that as well. As you can see, John has taken a lot of complicated material and tried to put it in a way that we can all understand it. But also, I just want to thank him for the effort he's put in over the last couple of years to make sure that we're standardizing what we're doing, that we're consistent with law. Obviously, changes at the federal level made that more difficult. and more challenging for us. But I think we have come a long way toward getting in a position where everybody can understand what we do. So I'm mindful that you need to take some time with the President's Search Committee and give some comments there. So I'll only say a couple things. I was surprised, frankly, that there were 5 or 6 questions about parking. I thought I was going to a class, because from time to time I get asked to go to a public policy class or a government class and that type of thing and meet with the students. And that, we're always talking about how do you build college budgets and higher ed and all of that kind of stuff. But when you get to the end and you say, so do you guys have any questions for me? They want to know about 2 things. They want to know about the athletic fee, and they want to know about parking. And I think probably they want to know about parking because they're the ones who are getting all the parking tickets. So anyway, just really quickly, the questions about parking related, I think, probably around 2 topics. One was, why do we have to pay? And then the other was, why don't we have parking right outside our building so that every time I need a spot, I can get it? Why do we have to pay is probably the easier one. Parking services is one of those things at a university that's an auxiliary activity. Auxiliary means there is no state money provided for parking services, for parking garages, for parking lots, and that type of thing. And so we are expected, if we build a parking lot, or if we need to go back and resurface lots and that type of thing, for the staff that do enforcement of parking and all that has to come from our own resources. We cannot use any state money for that. We cannot use any student tuition money for that. So that puts us in a position of saying, how do you generate money for the parking deck, debt service on that, and all of the other parking activities that we have here? That puts us in a position of charging folks for parking. That is not unusual. If I came here ages ago now from Richmond as a state employee. We paid for our parking then. They didn't provide it as a benefit. I've got a son who works at the Martin Agency, an advertising agency in downtown Richmond. He pays $90 a month, in order for his parking to be available. So we're all in a position of doing that, but it's not something that's really unusual as an employee. What we did do a number of years ago, 2006, somewhere around in that area, is we have actually, you may know, a tiered parking schedule. So if you're a student, you pay one rate. If you're an employee, we wanted to recognize that, employees across the college make various wages. Those who make higher wages pay higher parking rates. Those who make lower wages pay lower parking rates. So, we actually have come at it from a perspective of trying to be fair and equitable to the various employee types that we hear and the various incomes that we pay folks. So that's the why do we charge piece of it. The other side of it is, well, why do we only have, I'll call it a hunting license for parking rather than parking in dedicated spaces? Obviously a choice we have made. I asked Cindy to give me some data on that. We do have enough faculty and staff parking spaces for all the faculty and staff that we have here. But as you know, we're a heavy pedestrian campus. We expect that our students will walk from class, that they're not going to be bringing their residential students, can't bring their cars, but in selected spaces like the William and Mary Hall lot. So we tend to have more perimeter parking than maybe some other places. And so that puts us in a position of saying to folks, yes, there may be times that if you're the last one coming into your office rather than the first one, or in the middle coming into your office, that where you have to go to park is not going to be that right next to your building. But at the same time, because we are a pedestrian campus, let's be fair, everything here is a 10-minute walk. And most parking folks, when I talk to them and I say, well, what happens when you come in the middle of the day? We have folks who come in from Discovery, from Advancement, who are back and forth all the time coming in to find spaces. Does it take them a few minutes to search for them? Absolutely. Do they have a 3 to 5 minute walk to get to where they need to be? Yep, that occurs as well. But that's just the way our system is set up, and because of the pedestrian nature of the campus, likely where we will be going forward as well. Other questions I think about parking, there was why do some people get dedicated spaces? Well, we'll call it a perk for some of the senior executives, but on the other side, there are people, because of the nature of their job, that student residents, head residents would be a good example, where those folks need access in and out pretty frequently, and so we guarantee that those folks have parking so that they can do their jobs to do that. Let's see if I missed any questions, and then I'll take. Oh, special events, last one. So the question that came was, well, why do we let visitors in special events drive parking out? And I guess this would be, Muscarelli, I think, was used as an example. And I think the answer to that is we're a university. And there are going to be things that we do here that are for the greater good of our students and for our community, things that we are very proud to have. The exhibits that have gone on at the Muscarelli, they swing way above their weight. And, if you're going to invite guests to campus, you need to have a place for them. And so from time to time, and it's not every day, we know, but from time to time there's going to be displacement, and we as the employees, have to absorb that. But that's just the cost of doing business, of being a university, and frankly being one that's successful with the type of speakers that we bring in, the type of exhibits that the museum brings in, the sporting events that we have. Most of those things happen at night, but from time to time, things like the museum occur during the day, and frankly, we're glad to have those. Is it disruptive for some of us? Absolutely. But again, I would just call that the cost of being William and Mary. I'll be glad to take questions from anyone.
I'm a part of a carpool, and I want to know if there are going to be any revisions or improvements in regards to getting a carpool parking pass, because it's kind of difficult in terms of flexibility when members aren't necessarily in the carpool because they have to work late or they have other job duties. But on a normal basis, let's say 3 times a week or more, they are in a carpool. Is there going to be any improvements upon that, or are you looking to expand that, or really, yeah?
Well, it's a good question that, relative to carpools and support for carpools that I've not had before, but I see Cindy back there, and we do have a parking advisory committee, so I'm going to recommend that they look into that issue. And what that committee does is they, every 2 years, look at demand for parking all across campus, where parking demand has shifted, particularly as we renovate and build buildings. But that's the idea of can we do things to encourage carpooling is really the core of it. And so I'll ask them to look at that. I'm not aware of anything that's happening today on that, but we can look into it.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Iyaba Ushiapim. I'm faculty in Africana Studies and Linguistics, and I am on the search committee for the new president. And what we have been doing recently is conducting what we call listening sessions, which is why I'm here today. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the search, how you guys can respond, and if we don't have time today for me to hear all of your comments and concerns about the search, you can schedule to meet with me or any of the other 18 people on the committee at any time, in small groups or larger groups. There's only one stipulation, that only 2 of us on the committee could show up at any one time, unless it is announced 3 days in advance, and then more of us can show up. So if there's small group meetings, we probably don't want to announce that in advance. It's just 2 people. So this is how the search is going to work, a little bit in terms of the timeline. Towards this portion of the semester, end of the semester, after Reevely announced his retirement, we have been going around to various groups and having listening sessions. We will continue to do that throughout the summer and into the early fall. Our job for the summer is to find and hire a search firm. It is a closed search, and once we determine that search firm And we give the search firm our criteria for the ad that will go out sometime in early fall. Then the search will be closed at that point. During the fall semester, the committee will evaluate candidates that the search firm has provided, as well as candidates that we have discovered on our own, and you're welcome to send us any ideas or suggestions for particular people. And finally, in the fall semester, late fall semester and early spring semester, the committee will select 3 individuals from the search and present that to the board in an unranked order, and the board will make the decision. Okay, so this is the time for listening. So the general prompt is, what do you see, what are your aspirations for the next president of the college? Now, I don't know how much time we have. A couple minutes? Okay. So I think there's a microphone. I see one right there. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see you guys very well. So you can see the light's shining right here. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to put the microphone down and listen and write. And then I will summarize these things that you say and submit them to the committee. So all 19 people will be able to see the comments that you guys provide. Okay. So who's first? Don't be shy.
No one wants to say anything?
Oh, okay. And here is another member of the search committee.
I was looking to see if there were any more of them.
I think this is just me and you, right? No search committee members in here. I can't see you, except for the 2 of us. Okay, we're safe. Okay. This is Suzanne Raitt, by the way, who's also on the search committee, chair of the English department. And I don't mind one way or the other.
Oh, we've got one.
Hold on. Oh. Do you want to turn it off anyway? Do you want to turn off the camera? Okay, it's off? Because I see a red light.
It would turn off the live stream, I believe. So.
Is there?
I just wanted to say thank you to those that were attending through the live stream. We're going to conclude the meeting, and this last portion will be taking comments regarding the presidential search. So thank you very much. Yep. Here we go. One more thing.
If you are unable to communicate, I guess since they're going to be gone, they won't be able to communicate. We do have a web page. If you go to the William & Mary web page and enter presidential search, that will take you to our page, which also has a comment submission section. You can submit comments. I'm looking at the camera. So you can submit comments, and they can be anonymous, or you can identify yourself. The entire committee will have access to those comments as well. So if you aren't able to, and that goes for everybody in the room, if you aren't able to make a comment or prefer to do it online, you can do that.
I just had a question. With the search